A high school student fills out a college application and discovers he's on an FBI kidnapping registry. A teenager hides in a closet while a serial killer stands trial for her murder, and a pregnant woman solves a 23-year-old cold case by realizing she is the stolen baby. When a child vanishes without a trace, the passing years usually cement a grim assumption. The search parties disband, the leads dry up, and eventually society and law enforcement presume the child is deceased. But a handful of cases defy that logic. These individuals evaporated into thin air, only to walk back into the lives of their families exactly when all hope seemed extinguished. In the most bizarre disappearances on record, the victims didn't physically leave the map. They were concealed in plain sight, living quiet lives behind completely fabricated identities. Julian Hernandez grew up believing he had a standard life. He was a teenager in Ohio, earning straight A's, playing sports, and living with his single father. In 2015, Julian began applying for colleges. He typed his information into the forms, but the social security number he used returned as invalid. Assuming it was a clerical error, he asked his school counselor for help. The database search returned a direct hit. Julian's name and data matched an active profile on the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's Registry. Julian had been raised by his own kidnapper. 13 years earlier, Bobby Hernandez abducted 5-year-old Julian during a custody dispute in Alabama, then fled to Ohio and claimed the boy's mother had simply abandoned them. Bobby constructed a 13-year illusion of a happy suburban family. That entire reality collapsed the moment it collided with a mandatory automated data check. Sometimes the captor is a complete stranger who hides their victim right out in the open. In 1972, 7-year-old Stephen Stainer was abducted while walking home from school in California. His captor kept him nearby for 7 years, using psychological brainwashing to prevent him from running. He convinced Stephen that his parents no longer wanted him and had given him away. Believing the lie, Stephen attended local schools under a fake name. Stephen only broke that psychological programming when his captor brought home a new victim, 5-year-old Timothy White. Knowing Timothy was taken by force, 14-year-old Steenan waited for the captor to leave for a night shift, grabbed Timothy, and fled to the nearest police station. A similar pattern trapped 11-year-old Sean Hornbeck in Missouri. Kidnapped in 2002, Sean was taken to an apartment just an hour from his home. He was often allowed to go outside, but his captor used intense threats and intimidation to ensure Sean was too paralyzed by fear to ever ask for help. Sean's psychological prison was also broken 4 years later when his captor abducted a second boy. This time, a witness spotted the getaway truck, leading police directly to the apartment where both boys were found playing video games. These cases reveal a terrifying reality of abduction. Physical escape is often readily available, but psychological chains prevent it until the need to protect someone else shatters the conditioning. Other times, the missing person actively participates in their own disappearance. In 1998, 14-year-old Natasha Ryan ran away from her home in Australia after a series of family arguments. Her disappearance occurred during a string of local murders. Eventually, police arrested a known serial killer who confessed to ending Natasha's life. He stood trial, facing a life sentence specifically for her murder, while her family held a memorial service. Then, an anonymous tip directed police to search a house located just 5 minutes away from Natasha's childhood home. Officers searched the apartment, opened a bedroom closet, and found Natasha hiding inside. She had been living with her 22-year-old boyfriend for 5 years, aware of the trial, but terrified by the scale of the lie she had created. An entire town's grief, a massive police manhunt, and a high-stakes murder trial were sustained for years, while the victim sat quietly in a nearby cupboard. The most profound identity fracture began in 1987. A sick newborn named Carlina White was stolen directly from a New York hospital ward by a woman disguised as a nurse. 23 years later, Carlina was pregnant and asked the woman who raised her for a birth certificate to apply for health insurance. In response, she was given a poorly forged document. Carlina refused to accept her mother's claim that she had been abandoned by a drug addict. Suspicious of the forged paperwork, she launched her own investigation on missing children websites. She scoured databases until she found a missing baby photo from 1987 that matched her own newborn's face. She called the center's hotline, demanded a DNA test, and cracked the 23-year-old cold case. 23 years after the hospital ward was left empty, the kidnapper's deception finally fell apart, not through a police raid, but through a forged document and a mother's refusal to accept a lie. Whether hidden by a vengeful parent, a manipulative predator, or a teenager's own choices, an artificial identity is inherently fragile. These cases demonstrate that the missing often live in plain sight, hidden behind a desk or a front door, until a clerical error or a flash of recognition exposes the reality. A lie can survive for decades in the shadows, but eventually the truth of a person's identity demands to be acknowledged. To see more stories that challenge our assumptions about reality and human behavior, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you in the next one.